There's not that long a run to the first of 3 turns in the turf. And if you're outside on that one, you're probably going to be out there for the other 2. You can lose a lot of ground around 3 turns. Outside posts are problematic. As we have pointed out before, when Aidan O'Brien sends horses to the Breeders' Cup, they fire. Well, he sent Broom to the U.S. twice before. Both times the horse was coming off bad runs, and both times he ran his best race of the year. This time he shows up following 2 poor efforts on soft ground, which we are going to ignore. This guy is likely to run well. Channel Maker was the best of these in his day, but that day was 3 years ago. He's 8 now and only has 1 race in the last 2 years that makes him competitive. And this has not been his time of year. Masterpiece was solid but not spectacular last year and is a little better this year. He's as good as any of the American-based horses and a borderline contender. Mishrif is the best of these on his best, but other than his big one in July, he hasn't been the same horse this year. On top of which, he's coming off a stinker in the Arc. However, Gosden's horses have run well when he sends them, and the Arc non-effort came over a bog. We think this one will fire, and on his best, he's better than these. By now, we will have seen enough Godolphin runners to draw some conclusions, but unless they're going crazy, which they might, we can't use Nation's Pride as one of the favorites. His last 3 look much better than they were. He's developed a lot already, and he's already made his Godolphin and North America forward move. The Nation's Pride would have to improve a lot to contend. He's not for us. Nautilus is Southern Hemisphere bred, which means he is 6 months younger than it looks on his sheet, and that those last 2 were really late 3-year-old numbers. Note that over 800 plus starts, Lobo has a positive ROI. He knows what he's doing, and he chose to bring this guy back in the Breeders' Cup. Nautilus is probably going to run a new top, which may or may not make him relevant. Our opinion of Rebel's Romance also depends on how the Godolphin horses have been doing. He's just a borderline fit in his grass numbers, but he's had 1 very big effort as a 3-year-old. And many Godolphin runners go forward first time stateside. Red Knight only has 1 effort over the last 4 years that would make him a contender with these. The maker has only had him for 3 starts, and he did have some trouble in his last. He's a borderline contender. Stone Age has improved in a very healthy way throughout his 3-year-old campaign. He raced wide at Saratoga, actually earning a slightly better figure than Nation's Pride, while finishing 5th. He's inched forward again in his last 2, and now comes into this already a borderline contender when you take into account that he gets almost a point in weight from his elders. Good pattern plus O'Brien with a 3-year-old equals a good chance for a new top. This colt has also shown early speed in his last 2 races, and this would be a good time to use it. It's true the Warlike Goddess's figures have been compromised by some paceless races, but it's also true that she's never run one fast enough to make her more than a borderline contender, and has been picking her way through fields half the size of this one. By now we've seen all we're going to from Godolphin, and that will help us to evaluate Rebel's Romance. We don't like Nation's Pride regardless. Warlike Goddess was helped by the draw. Mishrif was not, but we're still going to use him. If he runs his top, he can overcome the post. But there are 2 we like. And by an amazing coincidence, both drew well, both are trained by Aidan O'Brien, and both will be prices. We liked Stone Age even before we knew he had Ryan Moore from an inside post going 3 turns. The others, of course, Broom, because we think he will run his race, and when he does, he runs fast.